I sat down with Turkey's Trade Minister Ömer Bolat on the sidelines of the forum and began by asking him about the current economic environment Turkey is facing.
For the last 22 years, under the leadership of our President, Mr. Erdogan, we have pursued an economic policy for trade liberalization, mainly for export promotion, and with trade diplomacy arrangements such as free trade area agreements, preferential trade agreements, and bilateral trade preferences. This way, we achieved a 7.5% growth in our goods exports and in our services exports, which boosted our national output to grow by 5.5 times in GNP and by 4.5 times in per capita GNP. So we have somehow worries about the outlook of the world trade and world economic output in the recent years, because WTO-based multilateral rules are being eroded year by year, month by month, and in the last case, the United States new administration has started to pursue a kind of trade policy to restrict imports from the third countries, particularly from the countries with which the United States has been giving the highest trade deficit. Everybody knows which countries they are. Therefore, there has been a kind of uncertainty as from the 2nd of April, when those extra customs duties were announced and imposed by the United States on many countries. This has caused a kind of turbulence in the stock exchanges, in the money markets, financial markets, and international economic organizations have been reducing their growth estimates for economic output and for world trade. But now there is a kind of pause for negotiations with the third countries, and we hope that world trade shouldn't be restricted, shouldn't be distracted by one-sided measures. And as Turkey, we have been following a very active trade diplomacy, because we are very much adamant and determined to boost our economic growth on export promotion and on international trade, both in goods and services sectors. We have been having negotiations with many countries, with some of them to sign free trade area or preferential trade area agreements, or to boost our customs duty with the EU by extending it to the new services sector investments as well. Also the same with UK, also the same with Gulf countries. I mean, our job is to work hard, also to avoid the detrimental effects of the outside negative developments on the world trade. We hope that we can be successful on these goals.
Right, and the US has imposed only the baseline 10% tariffs on Turkey at the moment, which is much lower than a lot of its peers in the region. But you've mentioned that you want to completely remove those tariffs. So what is currently in the works in terms of US-Turkey trade relations?
Yesterday evening, I had a video call meeting with U.S. Secretary of Commerce and U.S. Special Trade Representative to discuss the present outlook of our trade relations and possible negative effects of this 10% extra customs duty on Turkish exports to the United States. We had a very candid, sincere, and constructive meeting with the U.S. counterparts, and we had a compromise that both sides would like to increase bilateral trade and investment relations to very high figures, no doubt about that. On the imposition of 10% tax, the U.S. side let it be known to the all world countries that, the U.S. has the lowest customs duty in the world, about 3 or 3.5% on average. We'll see whether the U.S. will stick to that policy, or if they get some concessions, they may lift it. This is not certain yet. This is a period of negotiation for the time being, and our technical delegations will come together next month in Washington, D.C. to discuss all aspects of our bilateral trade investment relations, also customs duty arrangements to the fullest extent. But what makes us hopeful is that the U.S. and Turkey trade is a balanced trade on a win-win basis, and the U.S. seems to be quite hopeful on increased trade and investment with Turkey. We do have the same goals as well, so both sides can come to a common compromise in the end.
And Turkey has continued to receive foreign investment despite global challenges. For example, Chinese electric vehicle giant BYD opening a manufacturing plant in the country. Do you see this trend continue given the current climate?
On foreign direct investments, we have a very impressive performance of $277 billion of foreign direct investments in the last 22 years. This has contributed to $74 billion of annual exports, of which most of them are manufacturing exports, and this has created about $1.2 billion of mainly industrial employment for our country. Therefore, we have been doing our best to attract more foreign direct investments into Turkey, and also in turn for that, we see that as Turkish foreign trade increases, there are more foreign Turkish investors into the neighboring countries or into the attractive markets, and we see a trend of, as investments increase reciprocally, trade increases by twofolds. Therefore, we are very hopeful about foreign direct investments. Just in a nutshell, I can tell that 20 years ago we had been having $1 billion of foreign direct investment in a year, and we have been receiving $1 billion of foreign investment in a month in the last 20 years.
Right, and there's been an influx of cheap Chinese exports across emerging markets. How is Turkey protecting its industries from the threats of these?
This is a critical issue. We are a signatory to the World Trade Organization, WTO, based in Geneva, and we comply with multilateral rules by Geneva-based World Trade Organization. Our import policy is very simple. I mean, importing countries or those importing countries should comply with multilateral rules. Also, they should have a fair trade policy, fair trade measures. Also, they should not circumvent multilateral rules through backdoor exports or through third country exports or through falsified circumvention of their exports. If we receive complaints from our producers, if we receive such imbalances and such discrepancies which are against and which are contrary to WTO rules, we open investigations, and at the end of investigations, when it's necessary, we never refrain from imposing restrictive measures which are valid for us by WTO's multilateral rules. And we will continue this policy very swiftly.
Right, and a lot of Western nations are looking to shorten supply chains. What is Turkey's position in all of this?
Turkey, just in the center of Eurasia, connecting Asia, Europe, Africa, having a very quality and technologically sustained industrial manufacturing base and very high quality agricultural produce and very highly competitive services sector has a unique position to be a reliable and very strong base for logistics and for supply chains. We have proven this capability during the pandemic period when the logistic and supply chains were broken between the Far Eastern Asian countries and European countries and the United States. They immediately replaced their supply chains from supply sources from Turkey. And when the trade wars seem to be quickening and aggravating, there is a trend of calling our manufacturers, our exporters for extra supply in case of the blockage of supply chains from the East Asia. We are ready to act accordingly and to supply Western supply chains from our manufacturing bases, from our agricultural bases.